No doubt you've heard about these test cruises that Royal Caribbean and other cruise lines are going to be doing, and it sounds like a great opportunity to get a free cruise, right? You really should take a second look at it, and I've got the reasons why you might want to think twice up next. Hey everyone, it's Matt from RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com, and the cruise world is abuzz right now because of the great news that the CDC is going to give cruise lines like Royal Caribbean the opportunity to start test cruises. This is a big deal. This is great news. Don't get me wrong. It's amazing because this means that cruise lines are finally on their way to get real revenue cruises that we all love back out in the water so we can start booking those cruises and sailing later this year and well into 2022. The thing is, a lot of people are seeing these test cruises and there's an opportunity potentially to volunteer. And they're thinking, my goodness, free cruise, baby. Sign me up. Yeah, I'd love to do that. However, I don't think a lot of people are very aware of what you have to do. These aren't just cruises that are running in the background, kind of like a theme park that opens its gates up a little early just to get the rides moving, or a restaurant that wants to test out some of its new dishes and might invite some patrons to come in there and enjoy a free meal or two. There is that element to it, but there's also another major element, the reason why test cruises are being mandated by the CDC, and that is a lot of things that have to happen that may involve these volunteers that isn't exactly fun. So today, I wanted to go through all the things the CDC says that volunteers are going to have to do on test cruises, so that way, number one, you can be aware of it, and number two, you can think about, would I really want to go on a cruise in which you have to do all of these things? So let's start at the top. Why are there test cruises? Not just to appease the CDC and prolong the delay until cruises actually begin for everyone. They're about proving to the CDC that cruise lines can operate in a safe manner. For months, the cruise lines have been begging the CDC to allow them to restart operations. And the cruise lines have been saying, we have all these new protocols and rules that we're going to put into place, and these can protect guests. And the CDC is basically saying, okay, but now you've got to prove it. You've got to go through all the scenarios to ensure that we're not going to run into another major super spreader event. Like it or not, the CDC is still preoccupied with what happened on cruise ships in early 2020 that dominated a lot of the news cycles, where you had some ships over in Asia that had issues on board with COVID-19. Now, obviously, that was a completely different world in which we knew very little about the virus and, more importantly, had no protocols to protect it. Nowadays, we have way more knowledge about the virus and way more protocols to make sure that cruises can be done in a safe manner. But regardless, the CDC wants the cruise lines to go through this. But the only way to truly know if it's going to work is you've got to test it out. And that's not just having people come on board and hope there isn't any cases on board. It's about going through the paces and what ifs. Kind of like how if you're at school and there's a fire drill, right? Every so often you have to do these kinds of things in order to prove that everything is working the way it is supposed to work and people know what to do, et cetera, et cetera. So the volunteers are there to go on a cruise ship, but also to serve a function in facilitating this demonstration. I've been using the word volunteers, by the way, for what we're talking about, the people that are on board the ship, and you've no doubt you've heard about this. These test cruises, and there may be an opportunity for someone like yourself or me to be able to get on a cruise ship and be part of this. And yes, it is a free cruise. The cruise lines are not allowed to charge people to come on board, so they are, as advertised, a free cruise. But as I mentioned, there are other things. We'll get into that in a second. In order to qualify, it's pretty simple. You just have to be 18 years old, and it looks like fully vaccinated against COVID-19. That's at least Royal Caribbean's take on what they're going to be doing there. There may be some exceptions, but we're going to leave that out for a second. We'll just make this really simple there. Beyond that, you'll have to be aware that this is a test cruise. This isn't a standard vacation. So obviously, there are risks involved, number one. And number two, you are obviously going to be participating in a number of activities on board to help demonstrate these kinds of things. Now, the CDC wants to make very sure that the volunteers are aware that you're testing out protocols. It's kind of like testing out anything that's brand new. It may not work. So the cruise lines are obliged to inform the volunteers of what exactly they're in for. And there's a lot that they're in for here. So let's talk about the different activities that need to be done during a test cruise. Some of these are really minor and you might not even notice them as a volunteer, and others may significantly impact your experience on board. So every cruise ship has to do at least one test cruise, and there may be multiple of them. So this list of activities isn't about what every single sailing has to do, But at some point, the ship has to accomplish all of these. The CDC says they could do it all in one run, or they could spread it out among multiple sailings. So something else to keep in mind there. So let's jump into what all of these are. Number one, these simulated voyages must be between 2 and 7 days in length with at least one overnight stay. So that way they can basically not only test the protocols on board, but also embarkation and disembarkation. The CDC says that cruise lines must meet standards during the voyage for hand hygiene, use of face masks, social distancing for passengers and crew, as well as ship sanitation as required by the CDC. Royal Caribbean must modify meal service and entertainment venues to facilitate social distancing during the test cruise. Now, here's a list of the following activities that must be simulated on each ship, either again on one sailing or across multiple ones in order to get approval. Number one, embarkation and disembarkation procedures. Number two, onboard activities, including seating and meal service at dining and entertainment venues. Number three, medical evacuation procedures. Number four, transfer of symptomatic passengers or crew who test positive of COVID-19 from cabins to isolation rooms. Number five, onboard and shoreside isolation and quarantine of at least 5% of all passengers and non-essential crew. 6, recreational activities that the cruise ship operator intends to offer as part of any of these test cruises, including the casino, spa services, fitness classes, and gymnasiums. Number 7, private island shore excursions, if any, are planned during the voyage. These measures including one ship docking at the island at a time. Routine screening and testing protocols must be implemented for island staff who are expected to interact with the volunteer passengers or crew, and mask use and social distancing must be observed on the island. That's a big yikes from me. And number 8, port of call shore excursions, if any, are planned during these test cruises. Now, if there are any shore excursions, then a couple things have to happen. Number 1, you can't go on any self-tours or independent excursions on the island. You got to go through the cruise line. Number 2, shore excursions must only include passengers and crew from the same ship. Number 3, cruise ship operators must also ensure that all shore excursion tour companies facilitate social distancing, mask wearing, and other COVID-19 public health measures throughout the tour. And lastly, cruise ship operators must have a protocol for managing anybody with COVID-19 and close contacts at all foreign ports of call. Now, that's a lot. And a lot of this could change, by the way. Don't forget, the CDC has been updating a number of these protocols and requirements. In fact, we've seen over the last couple of weeks, requirements become recommendations, and some even altogether been removed. So there is the possibility that by the time these test cruises do roll around, you might not have to do all those things on board. And it remains to be seen that if you were on a test cruise, you might, whether or not you'd have to do all of these things, some of these things, one of these things, or you may not even run to anything. Who knows? But at the very least, the CDC is going to require a lot more stringent requirements than you might see on some cruise ships that are sailing this summer outside of the United States, because on those ships, they are not beholden to the CDC to get permission and to their rules. So all that in mind, test cruises are definitely a different kind of animal, and I think that if you're looking at some of these test cruises, you should be very aware of what's required and what's not required and everything else in between. And then you gotta weigh, is it worth it to do a free cruise? I would love to hear in the comments, after hearing all these things, are you down for possibly being one of these 5% people to be quarantined? Are you down to people to go on a free cruise because, hey, it's a free cruise? Who's knocking a free cruise, right? Let me know in the comments if you would still volunteer for one of these test cruises. I'm curious what you would want to do on this, because I know that I would love to try this out in the name of science, but my wife, probably not. I think she'd say, well, we'll just wait for the real cruises to begin. I'm looking forward to hearing those comments. Make sure you also like this video if you found it helpful. That's right below the video right there, the like button. And make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on your notifications so that way YouTube lets you know when we have a brand new video to share. This has been Matt from RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com, and we'll talk again real soon.